Hey, it's John from Gaddy's Garage. Today I'm going to show you our method for spacing a rear wheel on any kind of custom motorcycle. Stick around. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Monday in the shop today, and we're working on a Fatboy project. You guys have seen maybe some little shorts or snips of this, but no full videos. Just decided to do a little video today. A couple of the things we're going to do thought might be of some interest. Going to space the rear wheel. We're going to wire up the new handlebar switches, which are the 96 and later updated style. And we'll see what else we can get done. Maybe get the tail light and fender on in the back, the fender struts. We got to lower the rear end. Nothing crazy, a lot of basic stuff, but something that may be of interest for some guys that may have a similar bike. This is a 94, I believe, Evo Fatboy that we're turning into a little bit of a lowrider bike, mostly murdered out with some vanilla shake tins. So anyway, appreciate you guys being here, checking out what we're doing, and we're going to get to work. So first thing we're going to do is get our drive pulley out of the way. Number one, this particular drive pulley isn't going to work on this bike. We tried to downsize the pulley for a little bit better cruising RPM, but it won't fit with the belt, so we've got a larger pulley that we're going to use on this bike, and so just going to go ahead and remove it and get it out of the way to do the spacing. Alright, so first thing you want to do when you're spacing your wheel is get the wheel centered. I take the drive pulley off, I get the drive belt out of the way because we're not worried about that at this very moment. What we want to do is get all our components in place that affect the actual wheel spacing. So we got our brake caliper in over on this side, and now we need to make two spacers. One that goes in between the caliper and the wheel, and one that goes in between the wheel and the swing arm here. So I have here this big random spacer lot that I bought years ago, and also just tons of spacers I've accumulated over the years. So what I usually do when I'm doing this is I'll grab our vernier calipers, we'll take a measurement, and that'll give us our first spacer dimension. Always make them one at a time, installing them along the way. So we'll take the first measurement here, go into the face of the swing arm, and then measure down to the face of our bearing. And that's a 1" 465. So then I'm going to look in my box here and see what I got. We got a 1" 500. We got a 1" 375. These all come in, even dimensions. We've got a 2" So this is actually 1" 499. This is really close. I'm going to remeasure, confirm my dimension there, and see how close we are to just being able to use this basically 1.5 inches. So we're within about 15 thousandths. I'm going to call that good and install this over here on this side. And we'll make sure that it doesn't get too tight. If it ends up too tight, we can always machine a little bit off, but that's so close. I think this is going to work for us. So we got that in place. Okay, so now we're over on the brake side. You can see our caliper here. It's kind of hard for this stuff to show up with everything being blacked out on this bike, and then now we need to measure in between the caliper and the wheel. This can sometimes be a little bit tricky. Sometimes I'll just try and slide a spacer in there. It's very hard to measure at times. So a lot of times I'll just take a small spacer, slide it into place. Okay, so I know it needs to be bigger than this. I'll find the next size. This one won't quite slip in because of the brake rotor, but honestly it looks really close. So I'll measure this up. This is a 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to just pop this axle out and test fit it, just because we really can't get in there. So we'll slide our wheel back, slip that in. Slide this axle in, come back over here. Our other spacer fell out, so it's going to be a pretty snug fit, which is what you want. And there we have it. It's really that simple. You know, you got your couple of measurements. I'll try and see if I can get you guys in here where you can see. Here you got your brake caliper. We got a spacer there. The caliper hanger came with this spacer, which obviously we need to paint black. Jump you over here to the pulley side. You can see our belt, which will go on our pulley once we install it. And we got our spacer right here, our axle adjusters, and then, you know, our axle washer and nut will go right here. So one thing I did want to mention, if you don't have that assortment kit, it is very inexpensive on Amazon. I believe that's where I got it, either that or eBay. It's like 50 bucks or something maybe. If you're only going to be spacing one wheel and you don't want to mess with that, you can obviously just buy some aluminum round bar if you have a lathe. If you don't have a lathe, you can get some tubing that's the right wall thickness. And then what I like to do is use a plumbing type tubing cutter. It won't cut all the way through the thick wall tubing, but it'll give you a nice score all the way around the piece of material so that you have a nice square cut to line up on. You can use either a hacksaw at that point, a bandsaw. I would try and avoid a sawzall. It's a little bit probably too uncontrollable to get a nice square cut, but if you take your time, you can hacksaw a nice square cut and then file it clean using a line made with the tubing cutter. It'll give you a nice deep score, and your hacksaw blade will follow that right down. Now that we got our wheel spaced, I'm going to go ahead and hang the rear fender. What I like to do is install the fender strut on one side. Gives you a little bit of extra room to work. You get the fender in, your bolts installed on the side that you put the first strut on this particular bike. I put the right strut on, and we're able to slide our hands up and get all the nuts on the bolts. Being that we haven't lowered the bike yet, it gives us some extra room to work. Once that's done, you can just lay your next fender strut up there, and you don't have to worry about scratching that side of the fender with the strut in place had you had both struts on trying to install it. So just another little trick we like to use on these soft tails when we're getting them put together. This bike's not going to have any turn signals, so we're just putting a bolt in the turn signal hole and snugging everything up. With the fender installed, go ahead and pull the rear wheel out. That's going to allow us to install the tail light. We're running a tombstone tail light on this particular bike. Just like the look of it for this. It's blacked out, just like just about everything else on the bike except for the tins. So install the rubber gasket, slide the wires through. These wires will get extended and routed through the clips up inside the fender. You probably could have done this with the tire in place, but this makes it so much easier, and being that we have some other work we need to do up in the fender, we're going to flat black inside the fender. We're also going to trim off the mounting bolts so that there's not any extra hanging in there that could potentially come into contact with the fender. And being that we're going to lower the bike, it's a lot easier to do the lowering without the weight of the wheel and the swing arm. So for all those reasons, we went ahead and popped the wheel out while we were doing this work. So next up, we're going to adjust the rear shocks on a Softail. If you're not familiar, they lay horizontally underneath the transmission. So we pull the mounting bolts out of the rear part that mounts to the swing arm. This particular setup is adjustable. So it's basically a heim joint. You unbolt the heim joint from the swing arm pivot. You break the jam nuts loose on those, and it allows you to extend the heim joint out, essentially lengthening the overall length of the shock, which on a Softail, being a pull shock, will go ahead and lower the bike. We're trying to get this bike really set down as low as possible, so I extended them as much as they could be. So one other thing we're doing on this bike is we're updating to 96 and up style hand controls. I just like the way they look a little bit better. So in order to do that, we have to rewire the handlebar harnesses into the 95 and down plugs. You could also, I guess, change the plugs on the bike to the 99 and up, but I always just do it this way. So what I usually do is I'll have the old switch here. I'll use that to look inside and confirm the wire colors to the switch. I'll look in the new switch, which we have up here, confirm those wire colors, and then just match them up. So right now we're doing the headlight wire, the high-low, and the power feed in. They happen to be the same color, white, blue, and yellow on the 95 and down and the 96 and up, so that makes it pretty easy. This particular bike isn't going to have turn signals, so we're not going to really worry about the turn signal wires. So we'll just, on this switch, do the high-low and then also the horn. Always try to use solder and heat shrink on all of our electrical connections. If you've been around the channel for a while, I'm sure you know that. If you're new here today, welcome. Appreciate you stopping by and checking out what we got going on. Okay, so now we're going to look in here for our horn wires, which look like they are black and orange. Got black and orange here. That was green and purple. Yeah, so now, all right, so we got all those. So now we got to look up here and see what our horn wire colors are, because we don't have black and orange on our new setup. So here we got yellow and black and orange and white. So we got yellow and black and orange and white. This blue and white is turn signal wire. I'm just going to go ahead and clip that off, as we're not going to be using any turn signals on here. And then we have our black and orange here. Go ahead and snip that off, get that out of our way. We're not going to be using that. We're not going to be using this. We got our black and orange. So we'll strip these. Now that we have our wiring hooked up for the left-hand side, we're going to go ahead and do the assembly on the hand controls. Pull the clutch lever out of the way, allows you to close up the electrical switch clamshell there, kind of. Install the clutch lever back on, slide our grip up into place, and install the clutch cable. Clutch cable goes on with a little snap ring, so you'll see we use the snap ring pliers. Again, this is all real simple, basic stuff, but if you haven't done it before, hopefully this will help you out a little bit. Alright guys, that's going to be a wrap for today. Hope you guys enjoyed seeing what we're doing. Sometimes these little simpler projects I think maybe more people relate to, because it's stuff you can really easily do at home. This was a pretty crusty old Fatboy. See if we can find some pictures of it. We'll drop them in here so you can see where we started and where we're headed. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Appreciate you being here, and we hope to see you next time at Gaddy's Garage.